I am a career marketer. I've been working in the space for about 15 years, the last 4 of which have been in the cannabis industry. Currently the VP of Marketing and Sales Operations at Dama Financial. We do banking for the cannabis industry, essentially, all across different financial products. So if anybody needs compliant banking in the cannabis industry, I'm your guy. In the meantime, let's talk marketing. I have a background in theater. I actually studied theater, acting, and directing all through college. And I've always been an artist. So I'm an actor, I'm a musician, I'm a writer, I'm a painter, I'm a sketch artist. So there's all of these different things that I've always gravitated to as a person that all have to do with storytelling. And when I found myself in this career of marketing, I found these skills and processes that I learned as an actor and as an artist to be some of the most valuable things in my tool set when it came to being a successful marketer. So I want to share with you a bit about what it means to tell a story, why telling stories are powerful for marketing, show you a little bit of data around that. But I also want to tell you about the process of trying to understand characters from the way that actors do on stage and how that process translates into a marketing strategy, what you can do to start thinking like I do. So let's get into it. I wanted to start by defining marketing in my own terms. I could have used just a easy definition of marketing online, or I could have used an even simpler definition of marketing, but I don't think any of those things speak to it the way I think of marketing. So what I see when I see the word marketing is interrupting someone in the course of their day, no matter where they are, to try to get them to care about something enough to do something, right? So this means that like in the course of our days, we're either at work or we're at the grocery store or we're in the middle of a game or we're playing around on Facebook. And each and every time we're in the middle of our day, a marketer's job is to interrupt us in any of those things that we're doing, give us a message that hopefully we care about enough that we actually do something, whether that's open your email or buy your product in the store. To me, all advertising and marketing can be distilled down to trying to interrupt something, to tell them something that they should care about, hopefully enough to get them to do something. In this concept, there is no such thing as B2B or B2C marketing. In fact, I think this is kind of really one of the silliest things in our profession is this division between B2B and B2C. Obviously, there are very different tactics one might take to execute on a marketing strategy, but one of the worst hiring decisions I've ever seen, and it happens at almost every single company, is a consumer brand not hiring B2B software marketers because they're not B2C marketers. It's like, oh, you market software, you don't know how to market to people. Or vice versa, you only know how to market to brands, you've never had to market to a business person. This idea that we stop being people and just start being consumers or business people is absolutely absurd. I don't think there's such a thing as B2B marketing and B2C marketing. I think there's B2P marketing. It's just business to people. People are going about their day, and you have to interrupt them in the middle of that day to get them to care enough about something to do something. Doesn't matter whether they're a business or a consumer. We all think and feel, we're all humans, we make decisions, and this information has to interact with us. And at some point, you have to make us care about something to do something. It doesn't matter which hat you're wearing in the time that you're doing it. So that's what I think of as marketing. Loving some Schitt's Creek, so I had to throw a little Schitt's Creek gif in there for you. The thing about interrupting is it's hard. It's not an easy thing to do. People don't like to be interrupted, right? They're busy. They're working, they've got kids, playing games, watching TV, they're on social media. None of those things are places that they go or things that they do in hopes to receive your marketing message. Nobody's looking forward to you interrupting them with your pop-up ad or with your cold email or with your social media video. Like, none of these things are things that people want. They're not asking for your blog, but if you can interrupt them with a good story, they may pay attention to it. It's just really hard to do. And hopefully after the end of the session, you'll have a little bit of a better idea as to how you can interrupt people effectively and get them to care about something. What do people care about? Put simply, good stories. We all care about good stories. We learn as children through stories. As adults, we grow through stories, whether they're stories that people are telling us from their experiences or parables from religion. Stories connect to every person. We adapt to knowledge through stories. And in that respect, content is your most valuable asset because that's the story, right? So people learn better, people emotionally connect, people see the vision when you can tell a really good story. And the only way you can do that is through content. So obviously, this is going to be about content marketing. This is what people don't care about. They don't care about features. They don't care about benefits. They don't care about all of your integration partners or your pricing. None of that's anything they care about yet. They will ask those questions. They will want to know those answers. But ultimately, people make emotional buying decisions, whether they're wearing their B2B or B2C hat. All of the impulse to make a decision to buy is based in emotion, not in logic. And so this is where most people screw up. They want to communicate the features and benefits. They want to sell their product, but they haven't really connected to whom they're trying to sell it to with anything other than these logical features and benefits that people don't really make decisions based off of. I really blame Field of Dreams a lot here because I think product marketing took a real dive as a result of whatever philosophy came out of the "if you build it, they will come" phrase from Field of Dreams, but it's really nonsensical. I mean, so many brands and software companies and products, what they think is if we can just nail it, if we just build something really good, people are going to want to come participate. They're going to want to come buy. They're going to flock to our product because it's just so great. And that very rarely happens. Sometimes it happens. Very rarely does that happen, right? Field of Dreams teaches you if you build it, they will come. I'm here to tell you they will not just come for you. You have to find them. You have to get them to care, right? Because they don't care about you right now in their default position. And likely they might even be hostile, not knowing who you are. So you have to really get them to care. There's data to prove this. I'm not just making up a whole bunch of nice stories, right? Nearly 60% of customers feel that it is very important for brands to tell them why they should care about them. Very important, right? That's a huge deal, right? That's a major impact of over 60 or nearly 60% that think it's very important for you to tell them why they should care about you. 78% believe that organizations that are sharing custom content are actually interested in building good relationships with them. This is because they're recognizing the effort, right? Game recognize game. If they see you putting in the work to try to tell an authentic story, they think you care enough about connecting with them to build a relationship, and that speaks volumes. 78% believe that you are interested in building a good relationship just by creating custom content that speaks to them. 90% of customers find custom content useful in some way, but 90%, right? They want to be spoken to where they are, right? They don't want to have to meet you where you are. How do you tell your story? As a brand, this is where a lot of people take the shortcut route, right? They don't take enough time to really think about this the way that I think about it when it comes to storytelling. And really what I think, when I say I think about it, I mean all storytellers, whether you're a journalist or an artist or a playwright or a novelist or a movie director and writer, you have to answer sort of like the basic questions of a story. Who are you? And who, what, when, where, why, how is like kind of what those basic questions are. But I'm going to put these in order of what I think are the most priority and the most important. Who are you? Who are your customers? How do you serve them? I want you to really think about that. I'm not saying how do you make what you make. I'm saying how do you serve your customers? Why do you exist as a company? There could be a lot of reasons, but you need to know why you exist. It can't be just because you're trying to make money, right? I mean, I guess that could be a why, but nobody's going to care about your why if that's the only thing that's bringing you to the table. Reevaluate, find a mission, find a purpose. But why do you exist as a company rather than just all the other companies doing all the other things that you might compete with, right? The remaining what, when, and where, and how in the regard of how you do what you do, those are just your features and benefits, right? You can tack those on to the end of your story, you can put them in the middle of your story, but it can't be what your story is, right? So make sure you really think about who you are, who your customers are, how you serve them, and why you exist as a brand. So let's start with who are you? You're not a maker of products. You are a company of people with a history that led you here. And this is also very important to understand that there's no, universal personality for who the people at the brand are. The brand has a personality, but the people who made it are a lot of different people with a lot of different lived experiences and reasons for what brought them to the table. A lot of time those reasons can align across the board. Sometimes they're all over the place, but you really need to know what is the history of the people that brought you here. At the very least, what is the history of the founding team and the leadership team, and then you can start to include other people. But you need to know what led you here. You need to have a backstory, because all main characters have backstories. Very seldom characters have mysterious, no backstory told, but something is going to be revealed in that story. Let's not concern ourselves with that minutia. Most main characters have backstories, and you need to write or record yours. Focus on the founding principles of your backstory and of your company. And then once you've got that, expand that for your whole team. What do I mean by characters have backstories? Well, if I get cast as Hamlet in the play Hamlet, I would give a really crappy performance if all I did was internalize the lines in the play. Because the lines only tell you a part of the story. They only tell you a part of who this character is. It doesn't give you a full history of who Hamlet is. You just jump into the story, and you have to imply sort of or infer what this character's history or emotions and mental state are from one decision to the next. But with a little bit of context clues and some creativity, you can create an entire backstory for Hamlet, and it can be totally unique, but it just needs to make sense that your character is making the decisions that your character makes throughout the play, using the language that is written for you, with an understanding of a backstory that helps you get into the brain of your character. So I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but just make sure that you record your backstory and you know your history. Focus on the founding principles of who your company is, and then expand it for the rest of your team. Really find out what their stories are and how they intertwine. Here's a good example of a cannabis brand that I got to meet at Hall of Flowers. I went to the Supernova Women networking event with Hall of Flowers a couple years ago. I highly suggest you go check out Supernova Women. They put together great events. And one of the vendors I met at one of their events was James Henry. James, one of the co-founders, told me the story of what led to James Henry, and I only heard it once, and it was in a loud room while smoking weed that maybe only lasted 3 to 5 minutes long, and I have never forgotten this story, if you want to know why stories are powerful, right? So James's mother, she's a neuroscientist in Haiti. So not just a doctor, but a doctor of brain chemistry and science. And she, like so many others in Haiti, believed that cannabis was as bad as heroin and crack. They fully are in the stigma of the drug war that we also are still trying to emerge from. And James really believed in cannabis. He knew and saw what cannabis was doing for people, but just merely telling those stories to his mother wasn't really convincing her. And so what he decided to do was work with some scientists here in the United States to help build formulations of cannabinoids and terpenes that created the same chemical reaction in the brain that opiates does. So that when people are trying to exit opioid addiction, they can replace the actual, they can fill the void in their brain chemically with cannabis that is at least somewhat analogous to what that feeling was and what that chemical need was, to help them ease out of the addiction and find a much more wholesome substance to switch to and save their lives. And when he showed his mother the research and the formulations and the way that it really helps people, it helped her realize cannabis is a powerful medicine, that the stigma is real and is wrong and it needs to be fixed. And the best way to fix that for her was to show that this is a good thing that does good things for people. And he used that mission to convince his mother, like he will convince so many others who believe in this same stigma, right? And so his company, who they are, really tells you a lot about what they're trying to do and what the brand position is for James Henry. I'm going to give you a trigger warning before the next slide, because another story is really effective when you look at how Donald Trump became popular and at least for the first time successful, obviously not the second time. I want to throw out there, I'm not a fan of Donald Trump by any stretch of the imagination, but he used storytelling to convince over 70 million people that he was going to be the best president of the United States. He told them the story of him being a successful businessman who was able to build real estate and all sorts of different types of companies and sell them all over the place. And he's the biggest reality TV celebrity and blah, blah, blah. He's a super successful businessman. He's an outsider. He's not a political career insider like all of the swamp. He's a deal maker. He wrote The Art of the Deal, right? He's the author of deals and can leverage that business and politics and use his hard, shrewd negotiating power to do it, to bring politicians to the table. He's a lib crusher that's going to own the Dems, right? What you're not going to see in this story are the features and benefits, right? You're not going to see the policies or the issues that Donald Trump cares about, because those aren't the things that got him elected. Those aren't the things that people cared about. A lot of his base got riled up, if not only because of his personality and his story. This idea of a businessman being the best version of a president we can be because of their deal-making prowess or whatever, is a lot of why Donald Trump got the vote and continues to keep the vote despite having what seem to be very inconsistent features and benefits, right? So this just tells you storytelling is powerful. It can be used nefariously, or it can be used really wholesomely, like James Henry does. But I just wanted to give you a sense of two very different ways that storytelling is powerful and has worked to sway people and get them to care about something, whether or not the second example is a good one or not. So how do you get to who you are? Here's a couple different steps you can take. I do this at every single company I work with. I have done this for many different brands as a consultant or running my agencies. And when I mean do this, I mean build a brand profile based on journalistic interviewing. So the way that we do this is we set up an interview with the core team and founders, just like a journalist would. We want to ask the who, what, when, where, why, how. We want to approach them from an impartial place, right? So if you're an internal marketing person at your company, you want to try to approach this impartially. Like you might be friends with, or even one of the co-founders with some of the leadership team, but you need to put on a different hat on. Imagine that you're walking into this company and you want to kind of scrutinize the story and really write from a third party, viewpoint. Or you can also hire a writer, which I suggest if you are too close to the source. Hire a writer that has done journalism and also content writing, because they will know how to lead this interview wonderfully. And you really want this interview to be substantial, so it needs to be 2 to 4 hours long, and you need to record the whole thing because you're definitely not going to keep up when you're writing notes well enough to record it all by hand. So actually do an audio recording off your laptop or whatever. Record the interview. It doesn't need to be like a podcast interview. You don't need mics, but if you really want to go all out, go for it. But spend a good 2 to 4 hours on it. You have to ask a lot of probing questions. People are going to remember certain parts of the story out of place, right? And so it's going to be all over the place. It's going to be scattered, but you want to get as much as you possibly can. Once you've recorded it, you then want to transcribe it. And I don't mean like a word for word transcription. I just mean collect the story in writing, type it out from the recording, and actually put it into story format. Like, so if someone's talking about the origin and then like 2 hours later they bring up some more stuff about the origin of the company, like just edit that so that it goes in the beginning of your outline, because you just want this to flow, right? So transcribe it in a way that you can arrange it so that it's one consistent story, one consistent interview. Write that up and then circulate it amongst the team and make sure you didn't miss anything, get some additional feedback. And then you will have started with, who you are as a company. Next, you want to go into who are your customers, right? This is probably more important, if not only because they're the people you need to get to care about something. When we talk about who your customers are, most people make the mistake of thinking about the demographics. Your customers are not demographics. They're just not. Let me give you a really good example. I used to live, the first home I bought was on a street with 10 other homes. We're kind of like on our own little block. And everyone was between 25 and 40 years old and had a starter home within a particular median income range. If you look at demographics, all 10 of us were identical people. I got diaper ads stuffed into our mailbox, just like all my other neighbors, only some of which had kids. My wife and I didn't have any kids. We weren't planning on having any kids anytime soon. It was definitely not something we were getting to for at least 5 to 10 years. So it was like, this is totally irrelevant to us. Why are we getting this? Because we are 25 to 40 years old, white suburban homeowners with an income level above. None of that is who we are, right? So your customers are not your demographics. Your customers live lives and they make independent decisions. All of them do this. They all make independent decisions. They all have a different mix of variables and they're not all identical, right? So understand these lives that they live. The key is knowing why they make their decisions. It's not about what they do, it's why they do it. That is super important to unlocking who they are and how you can get them to care about what you've got to offer them. So one way that you can really do this is just interview your current and target customers, as many as you can. You can do focus group interviews or interview individually, set a number of team members out to do this. Collect as much information as you possibly can, as much data as you can on who these people are. Spend 30 minutes or so asking them the same types of questions you ask the brand. Just don't spend 2 to 4 hours on it. And find out as much as you possibly can about them. And then once you've got that information, write a character profile of each of them. Character profile is it's an actor thing. And I'm going to show you how to do that here in a second. But it is, when I was telling you about Hamlet earlier, understanding that backstory, understanding why the character makes the decisions they make throughout the play, what the character's motivations and emotions are and mental state are, that's the character profile. And you want to have a character profile of every one of your customers. When you're writing a character profile, I'm not going to go through all these, just like screen capture this, or you can download the slides later, but there's like 20 questions or so you can ask that will help lead you to a full character profile. Do this for every type of customer that you can do. You want to know their full name and who their immediate family is, what's their job. More importantly, do they like their job? Where do they live? What type of living and decoration do they like? Favorite food, movie, song, color. What's their biggest pet peeve? What's their biggest secret? Like, these are very revealing questions, and if you can really get into the minds of them, they might not tell you this, by the way, but try to answer these questions as much as you can. Use your imagination as much as you can. Test assumptions, like make a couple assumptions and then ask them if this is something that they resonate with. But really understand this like emotional, mental, psychological motivation information in between the demographics. I want to talk about one demographic, one target customer that is beaten to death when it comes to this conversation, and that is the soccer mom. Like, casting aside already like the sexism behind the idea of the soccer mom, that's already problematic. But let's just talk about what people mean when they say soccer moms. They mean 30 to 45-year-olds, white suburban moms. They mean people who drive minivans, who buy frozen pizza and drink lots of wine, whom are college educated, work full-time, earn around $90,000 a year, love convenience like online banking, they pay for housekeeping services, they get fast food for their kids. None of this tells me much about who they are as a person, just tells me a bunch of things about them and what they want, and maybe I can glean a little bit of they're busy and they like things that are convenient. But that doesn't really tell me much about who the soccer mom is. I want to show you what a character profile would actually reveal. This is a very condensed version, so this is not what a character profile looks like. This is just what, some of the key messages that you can pull out of a good character profile. This is the soccer parent, right? Let's call this soccer parent Nate, right? Because it can be a male or a female, we don't know. And it can be from any race of any person and relatively any age, right? Just depends, roughly speaking, when they decide to have their children and their children are old enough to be playing soccer. But what does matter for most of these people is that their life is crazy. They have to run from task to task. They're going, they get up in the morning, they get ready for work while at the same time preparing breakfast for their children, making sure their bags are all packed up with all the things they need for school, get them into the car in a timely fashion, drive them to school, drop them off. Then they have to drive through traffic, get to work, go to work, deal with work, emails all the way through this whole process. They get off work early, go pick up their kids. Then they have to take them right to soccer practice, right? They get to soccer practice, the kids are playing. They maybe have a moment here, right, where they can get some respite, and then immediately right after soccer practice have to get home. The partner of the parent and them are doing some sort of house chores like cooking and cleaning, and then they sit down and they eat, and then they got to put the kids to bed, right? Like, even just trying to imagine this, I'm sure, is exhausting. It's a crazy task-to-task lifestyle, right? The partner also works full-time, and for the most part, these two kind of pass like ships at night. Like, they only get the bookends of the day to sort of get to connect. And it's really mostly the end of the day that they actually get any time together. There's no peace and quiet. They are fueled by coordinated anxiety and caffeine. There's noise around them at all times, right? Music and games and TV shows and kids playing on a soccer field and kids screaming coming out of school. And it's just like constant noise. They have a moment's peace during practice where they can like sit and zone out or like take joy in their child playing, and maybe a little bit at the end of the day when their kids go to bed. Mostly at all times they have to remain functional because of this chain of chaos, and yet they still want temporary relief so that they can just take that moment and just. So when you're looking at this, what you're seeing is a lot more of a profile of who we're talking about. We're not talking about this person, whatever this person is. This person the soccer parent might fit all of this. They might do all of this, right? All of these things might check off boxes for them. None of this tells me about these moments that they don't get to savor as much as they'd like. Now, none of that tells me about their anxiety and the stress of their constant chain of chaos that is their day from task to task. Nothing in that tells me about these moments that they might have that are their only moments of peace, right? And those moments are where the most important value lies for us to tell a story. So how do we sell to them? Let's talk about Nate, the soccer parent, right? I told you earlier about James Henry, and they make these special formulated vape pens that are relatively low dose and medically, researched and are out to fight the stigma and to normalize cannabis use. So, James Henry might want to appeal to Nate. They need to tell Nate the story about normalcy, right? And they need to tell a story about helping to reduce the excess signal noise. Like I said, there's all that noise and all that chaos. And sometimes you need to be able to just like tone that down and take that moment to just breathe, right? And that's a story that they need to tell. They need to tell a story about connecting to the moment, whether it's to kids or to Nate's partner, right? So Nate gets to the soccer field. He's gone through this crazy, crazy day. He gets to the soccer field. It's the first time that the kids run out of the car and he's just by himself quietly with literally nothing to do because the kids are getting ready to go on the field. He can just spend 5 minutes in the minivan just to himself, right? And in that moment, if James Henry can tell him a story about using their vape pen just to take a little relief, cut that edge off that anxiety, don't think about the emails for a minute, you're here to be with your kid at soccer practice, hit this vape pen, get out of your minivan, sit on those bleachers, watch your kid run around like a crazy person for an hour, and enjoy it. Or just zone out and zero out and give yourself a little meditation, right? Maybe at the end of the day, your partner, Nate's partner and him want to lay down in bed, hit the vape pen, and just cuddle and watch This Is Us or have sex or whatever, right? And give them that chance to connect. It's those two moments that if James Henry can tell a really great story to Nate, Nate's going to understand, he's going to care because they're going to be speaking to him. They're going to be illustrating an authentic understanding of the motivations of Nate's character that connects him to that story of finding that peace and that moment to connect. That's how you use a character profile to tell a story and find the ways to get those messages to resonate. There's a couple of examples of people who are doing this really well. By people, I mean brands. Dove is a really great example and highly lauded. They turned the sales of soap and beauty products into a statement about self-worth and self-esteem, about finding beauty. For those who haven't seen the Real Beauty campaign by Dove, it's incredible. The first one caused me to cry, to be perfectly honest. That is a story that connected with me, even though I wasn't their target demographic. I wasn't one of the women shown in the actual advertisement, but what they spoke to were self-esteem and self-love and issues about beauty and appearance, which I have, right? Like we all have. Maybe those of us who deal with that, but many of us deal with this, right? So it doesn't matter whether you're male or female. That message connected with me. It caused me to cry. And while I still don't use Dove products, it at least caused me to care about them and pay attention. I do support them if you want to use that product. I just don't myself. Subaru is another really great example. I actually might buy a Subaru, to be perfectly honest, because I think they've kind of won me over with their story. But what Subaru realized is that they're not selling vehicles that are safe, that have good anti-lock braking systems and great crash test ratings. I mean, they are selling those things, but that's not how they're selling them. What they're selling is the love of family. And when you hear the words love is what makes a Subaru, what they're showing you and what they're connecting to is the idea of family love, of spending time with your family, of protecting them, of going to have experiences with them. And that's the story they're telling. And people can really connect with that around Subaru. I'm building a family myself. I need an SUV. We like to go outdoors. Subaru's been hitting all the right points for me, right? And you know, how they protect me is anti-lock braking system and crash test ratings, but that's not the story they're telling me. I can get that afterwards. Keep that in mind. A couple cannabis brands doing it really well are Farmer and the Felon. Co-founders of Farmer and the Felon actually did prison time when they were growing in the legacy market. And then they came out of prison and they got licensed. And in the regulated market, they're now selling really good quality cannabis, where their entire message is about freeing every last prisoner that is currently doing time for a cannabis offense. They partner with the Last Prisoner Project. Proceeds go to the Last Prisoner Project. Everything about the Farmer and the Felon brand, from the logo to the name to the story, is connecting the legacy market and the evil of the drug war and what it does to people by incarceration, and connects those to people who care about ending all of that destruction and evil. And that is the entire brand. They do a great job telling those stories. Space Coyote is another one I particularly love. They make infused hash joints in Southern California. And their brand was created one night when the co-founders were watching a meteor shower in the desert. Night, they could see the Milky Way, meteors, you know, it was like this super cosmic experience for them. And they wanted to make a cannabis brand that spoke to just, you know, the good, classic, cosmic, art-loving, sustainable stoner. And they do it so well. So I highly encourage you to check out those brands as well, to just kind of get a sense of how these stories are being told and what you might be able to do with your brand. So how do you tell stories? You know, you've got a character profile, you know your character's backstory. Now what, right? You've got stories to tell. How do you tell them? Mainly content creation. You need to be your own content creator. You need to be your own publisher of content. All kinds of content. You know, from infographics to blogs to videos to interviews. You know, anything that you can do to create content that tells these stories and helps fill needs for people and helps solve problems for people, that is stuff that you need to be doing. And it's very hard to do this. It's time intensive. It takes a lot of lifting, right? So don't just rely only on your own labor to do this. Like, you can also interview other credible subjects within your sphere of influence and use their voices. Within the story arc, you can tell the stories of your customers. There's a whole lot of things you can do here, but you have to really think about creating content on a constant basis: blogging, emailing, social media, video, infographics. Everything that you possibly have at your disposal, you should try to use, and use it strategically. Public relations is a pretty obvious one because that's all about storytelling, but you need to tell your story often, and you need to find out how to adapt it to different publishers. So you don't want to tell the exact same story each and every single time. You know, sometimes you're going to talk to two publishers that have the exact same audience. Try to find a different way to tell your story. Find out what that particular magazine's audience or publisher's audience are, and maybe there's a little bit of a different slant you can take based on how they talk to that audience. But try to find ways that you can tweak how you tell your story to different publishers, and use that in your public relations. For social media, take your story and break it up into little bites. You know, don't try to tell your whole story in one bit because it gets too long. Whether it's a video or the written word, it's going to be over the attention span that most people have. So think about social media. Think about how fast people are moving through this. Find ways to break out tiny, tiny little bite-sized stories that you can tell. Little catchphrases, testimonials, lots of different things there that can help tell your story, even if they're not coming out of your mouth. The most important part of storytelling that most people mess up actually is internal storytelling. And that is telling your story within your brand. Your team needs to hear your story often. You need to create mission and vision statements for your team based on your story. And it should happen often. I mean, you got to think about the fact that people and companies are making products that are for a whole lot of people. And if they don't know what their stories are, if they don't know who those customers are, and they don't know what the company's brand purpose is, how are they going to be making products to fit those needs and those people? I mean, it's going to be a lot of a shot in the dark, right? Product development, marketing, sales, leadership, investors, public relations. Like there's so many aspects where everyone on the team needs to know the story. And the more they know that story, the more on board they're going to be, the more engaged they're going to be, the more productive they're going to be, and the more effective your whole organization is going to be. So don't neglect internal storytelling. Just to give you a little bit of data, content marketing through storytelling increases conversion rates by 30%. This isn't, again, just a bunch of feel-good stuff, right? If you're going to be putting in the time and putting in the effort, you need to know that it's going to provide you an ROI. And that ROI is going to come in a 30% boost to all of your general conversion rates across the board just by telling good stories. So there's a checklist you can use when it comes to how to tell good stories. You need to be sincere. Number one, most important thing in the world when it comes to telling a story is to have sincerity and authenticity. That's what people are going to connect to the most. You want to develop content that has human emotions, right? Again, forget about the features and benefits. Forget about the procedure. Forget about the equipment. Forget about all those things. Think about what is the actual emotion that your customer is going through that they want your product to help solve. Right? It could be a problem. It could be the need for joy. It could be all sorts of things. It could be pain. But make sure you really understand what is the emotion behind it, right? Think about that moment where Nate's sitting on the bleachers able to connect with his kids or meditate and just woo-saw for a second, right? What is that emotion like? Not the moment, but the emotion. That resonates with your audience. So you're identifying their needs. You're connecting with them authentically. You have to hook that audience first. Then you introduce your product second, right? So make sure that you give them a reason to care. Then you can tell them about why they should care and what they should do. Stand up for something and stick to your purpose. This can be a social cause like Farmer and the Felon, but it doesn't have to be a social cause. You know, this just means stand up for something. Space Coyote stood up for cosmic artistic stoners. James Henry stood up for opioid addicts and normalcy and fighting stigma. Farmer and the Felon stands up for liberation and ending the war on drugs and restorative justice, right? There's a lot of different things you can stand for, but pick it and stand up for it and stick to it and make sure that your whole team is organized around it and know what connects your audience to you. This last bit is about using data to actually validate some of the decisions you're making. Validate those stories. Validate your customer profiles. Make sure that when you're telling a story that you're seeing good return, that you're seeing good open rates, that you're seeing good traffic, that you're seeing, you know, whatever metrics you're following that are going to help you know that your story is succeeding. You know, whether it's your click-through rates and conversion rates are happening and you're starting to see revenue, or it's merely just trying to get enough attention to a particular story. But make sure that your data is helping confirm some of those character profiles and some of that story that you've been putting together. So that's all I've got for you today. I know it's relatively short, hard to cover a whole lot of this stuff. So I'm sure you might have some follow-up questions or want to know a little bit more about some of these methods. So you can reach out to me personally on Twitter or on Instagram. My handles are here. And also if you're looking for financial services, banking help, Dama Financial can help you with that, so you can reach out to me and I can connect you with the right people there too. So anyway, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for listening. Happy storytelling.